everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Great Identity Debate. The Great Identity Debate is a series from CAF, where we discuss topics pertaining to the fraud and identity, and those topics are top of mind across industry. Today's topic is the evolving nature of KYB. Every person is a business. And this is something that I find very interesting because we're moving from a world where companies and organizations are these large organizations to a world where everybody can be a business. Many people have side hustles, you have freelancers. And so we're moving from those that only big organizations would need to undergo KYB to private individuals like myself who also become a legal entity. And I'm very fortunate today that I don't have to talk about this on my own. I'm joined by the experts. So before we head in, I'm already going to say thank you to Melisande, Atul, Travis, and Owen. Thank you for joining. I would have even done this off camera just to have the chance to speak to all of you. Now, before we dive into the subject, I want to say a few practical matters. So for the viewers, you'll see that the chat is on mute. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't ask questions. Please do. And we'll do our best to deal with the questions throughout the conversations. And if not, we'll commit to answering the questions offline. Now, before we dive into the questions, I want to kick it off with a short round of introductions. So, Melisande, would you mind taking the first stab at introducing yourself?
Of course, Peter, and thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. So I'm Melisande Mouwal, publisher of The Papers. The Papers is a leading global online publication for professionals in payments and fintech. And our platform is dedicated to delivering the latest news, blogs, and industry reports. I founded The Papers in 2012 and have been closely monitoring the industry ever since. So really excited.
Well, and I'm glad you're here, and I'm a fan. I'm a fan of The Papers. I follow it.
Always good to meet a fan.
Atul, over to you.
Yeah, hi Peter. Again, thanks for inviting me. So I'm Atul Chowdhury. I'm the CEO of a company called KYB, which is the new platform and banking as a service arm of Monese. So Monese, as a lot of you would know, is a banking equivalent in the UK and Europe. We serve over 2 million customers, and part of our proposition is business customers. So we serve the gig economy and people that are new to the country.
That's appreciate that, Atul. Thank you for joining. And so you're on the sweet spot of having dealt with maybe larger companies in the past, and now you're in the gig economy. So you see you're perfect for today. You see the difference. Travis, over to you.
I am Travis Dawson. Thank you, Peter, for having me here. I am a senior director for product at StockX. StockX is a global company for current culture. So we are a marketplace for everything from sneakers to collectibles to handbags.
And I appreciate it, Travis. Thank you for joining. And marketplaces are in the crossfire of some new regulation across Europe and the US. So I'm sure you're glad about that, and I'll be happy to talk about that. And then last but not least, Owen, go for it.
Hello, thanks, Peter. I'm Owen Thomas. I am the KYB product lead at CAF. I've been a product manager for well over 10 years now, and I've always worked in the kind of business data space or data orchestration. So arrived at CAF a little over a year ago, and we've been building out the global KYB solution ever since.
Perfect. Owen, I have a bunch of questions that I might just push to you because I feel like when we're on camera, we're recording, you have to answer me. So maybe we'll get to those. Cool. Look, let's kick it off. Let's set the baseline. So we're going to talk about KYB. We're going to talk about individuals being a business. But maybe before we get to that end stage, Owen, would you maybe kick it off and say, what do we understand under KYB? What do you understand under KYB?
Okay, so KYB, or Know Your Business, is it's an umbrella term effectively for the the processes and checks that financial institutions and other companies carry out on the businesses they're looking to deal with, to verify that the business and the people behind them are legitimate and reputable.
And so it's a double. It's the business and the people that sit behind it as well.
100%, yes. For your classic KYB, I mean, I suppose Travis can speak more towards some of the regulations that's coming in for the marketplaces that aren't too focused on UBOs, the people behind the business. But for the most part, when people think KYB, it's business and the owners.
Perfect. And I will get to the regulation later. I know everybody's itching for that, but I think you already alluded to that first difference there. When you do KYB on a large organization, you need to look at who sits underneath that, the UBOs, and for the KYB, every person is a business. That might be a bit easier. So we set the baseline. We know what KYB is now. Melisande, maybe you could talk a bit about some of the trends you've seen in KYB.
Yeah, maybe to start a little bit with KYC, because there we've seen over the last 5 years, lots of innovation and basically the beginning of RegTech in automating a lot of these processes. So KYC is a very digital, smooth process, mostly, because there's still a lot of application abandonment. However, in KYB, it basically very much relies still very much on slow manual processes. I think on average, it takes between 90 and 120 days to onboard a corporate business customer. And if you look into sort of this very slow speed, it obviously also leads to abandoned applications, which according to some data I found means that global commercial and business banks lost $3.3 trillion because of these abandoned applications. And this is data from 2018, but I'm sure it's might not have decreased a lot. So that's really a problem. And also because 30% of KYB verification is entirely manual. And to the point that Owen made earlier, it's of course not easy because you have to check the identity, the structure of the business, the UBOs, who are the ultimate owners, the management, the fiscal health, the business operations, and all that. So yeah, there's still a lot of manual processes.
Okay. So
maybe another trend, if I may.
Yeah, go, please.
Massive growth in business fraud, because it's so easy to set up a fake business. For the UK Company House, they do not verify the accuracy of information filed, and that means that basically 18%, so 18% of new businesses registered there are fake.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's a lot, and that leads. that obviously during COVID led to a lot of fraud because it was so easy to set up a fake business. So billions of pounds being lost from these COVID loans, just to give an example. So I think these two manual processes, lots of business frauds,
Okay, so
pressing issues.
The good thing is we started out with not only positive trends. So I hear we're losing money. There's 1 out of 5 businesses are not really businesses, and it's slow. So that's a good trifecta. Travis, when you look at it from your side, what are some of the trends you see in KYB?
The big trend is that we are being forced to do it as marketplaces. Marketplaces were able to not do it for a long time, and now with the new regulations coming in, we really don't have a choice. So in the US, of course, between the IRS rules and the Inform Act, we're being forced to do some level of KYB, and in Europe we have DAX 7, and DAX 7 is spreading to Australia, New Zealand, Costa Rica, several other places. So the new trend is we're being forced to do it when we weren't before. And as a result, we're finding that, as Melisandre said, a lot of our businesses aren't really businesses. And in addition, a lot of even our good businesses are 1 to 5 people. So doing a level of KYB on that is challenging.
Okay.
And to be even more entertaining, we are being forced to do this in short timeframes. We have 10 days in the US to do this, and up to 90 days to do it for DAX 7. That is an amazingly short period of time to do any kind of real analysis on a company.
Okay, and Travis, maybe if you don't mind me picking up on that, is there a method to the madness that you believe? Okay, there's legislation coming, but surely that legislation is not only been put in place to annoy people at marketplaces. There must be a reason for that. Is it because what Melisande said of all the fraud we're seeing?
Yes and no. For the IRS rules and DAX 7, it's because these businesses or these individuals were not paying taxes.
Fair enough.
So they were simply not paying taxes, and it was a way of identifying and positively identifying the users so that the government could get their money. In the Inform Act, it is almost exclusively buyer protection. So it is to protect against fraud.
Okay.
So that is a step in the right direction. DAX 7 does have additional provisions for protecting more consumers in the EU, but it is mostly to get their money. The government is going to get their money.
Okay. Yeah. I sometimes, I noticed from the start, I'm sometimes I would say you could choose optimistic or naive. I was thinking that it was to help the businesses, but the government was in there as well. Atul, I know we went through some trends as well, but I'd like to get your view in it, especially like if you're helping so much with the gig economy.
Yeah, I mean, for us, like your introduction, the business of today is very different from the business of the past. There are more and more people that are creating side hustles. People are working in the gig economy, which means they don't have a permanent employment. A lot of times where people were able to historically trade as sole traders, it's now more cost effective and easier and actually better legislatively to become a small business. And a lot of these people don't understand business. They haven't been to business school. They have started selling a lot of things on eBay and realized that now they need to become professional about it. So the first thing that they do, and we see this a lot, is they will just continue to trade on their normal bank account because they've already done it. It's easy. They don't even know that they need to go on to an alternative. And then when you set up your company, you very quickly realize that you then need to set up a bank account. And so the first thing you do is go to your bank, your personal bank, and you go and try and set up a business account. But it isn't as easy as going into the mobile app and clicking, I now own a business. So normally the advice that you get will require you to bring a certain number of documentation in, demonstration of incorporation, demonstration of registered address, and people don't have this at hand. And even if they do, they don't really understand what it means. So banks have tried to digitize this process. Some have done it better than others, but actually, and the UK, to be honest, is much better than a lot of other countries. At least we have a central register of businesses and people that are associated with a business. That's a lot better than other companies have as well. So the nature of businesses is changing even from the start. Then it gets even more complicated because now you have, other people that are directors of your company. And then when you start getting fundraising, you raise capital, and then you have, ultimate beneficial owners, and they, are part of other companies that you then have ultimate beneficial owners of, etc. So it becomes a bit of a web, and you need to provide data across all of that web. And then the third thing that we're seeing even more recently is as we go into a more difficult environment for companies, even directors are changing more regularly than they ever did. So, in some companies, we see directors change every 2-3 months. And if they change every 2-3 months, then, you are supposed to do KYB on those new directors. And sometimes you don't even know when that has happened. And the business can take time to register that, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, if anything, we are trying very hard to make KYB more effective, but the nature of business is constantly moving the target for us.
Okay, I appreciate it, Atul. And then picking up on what you said, I did notice that you started with a positive, so thank you, because you started with, it's easy to create a business, and I think that is something that maybe 20 years ago wasn't the same. And so I think that's a positive, and that's the world we live in, and it also comes with the positives. Now, you mentioned a few of those trends. I wanted to pick up on that. Do you make a difference are you working on helping those smaller companies, those freelancers? Are there different flows for onboarding on your end? Is that something that you're actively working on?
Yeah, I think we're constantly looking at the customer journey. One of the things that we did as a relatively small organization, and our business customer isn't the primary group of people that we serve. So we make our customers go through a KYC process first. So they will actually have a current account with us before we give them a business account. And for us, that makes the customer journey much quicker because we already have the majority of the information that they need. But it also limits we can see the flows of money generally between the accounts. But it does limit the customer base that we service at the moment with our business accounts, because they need to be a single limited company with a single director. So we haven't got into the very complicated businesses yet.
Fair. I appreciate that. So I'm mindful of time, so I'm gonna head over to the next question here, because I want to pull as much information as I can out of everybody. So we had some trends. What are some of the bigger pain points then within KYB? And you touched on a few already, and maybe some of the pain points, and also some of the pain points relating to the onboarding of those smaller companies. Melisande, you wanna take a stab at this?
Yeah, I will. I think one of the biggest challenges for banks, and I take the bank perspective, if as a business you want to, it starts with, okay, you can register your business, that's not so complicated, but then you need a bank account, you need an account. I think the biggest pain point now is very much into cross-border business onboarding.
Yeah.
And the 90 to 120 days maybe applies to when you're a Dutch company, you want to apply for a bank account with a Dutch incumbent, well, pretty standard. But if you want to open a bank account in a country, even within the European Union, it can take 9 to 12 months with incumbent banks, because I think the biggest challenge is a biggest pain point, there is a lack of trust in data and in data sources. There's also a lack of trusted methods to verify that data. So it's pretty complex. And if you basically add to that there's a lot of complex policies and inefficient internal processes within a lot of banks. What I've seen, and it's literally my own experience in opening a bank account in another country, the bank employees feel paralyzed. They basically shuffle files from desk to desk. That can take months. And literally then the conclusion is after 3 months, thank you so much for your Chamber of Commerce extract. Unfortunately, it's 3 months old. So you need to file in a fresh one, because we need a document that is not older than 3 months. So that's a little bit of the process, and that takes months and months. And I think that's a very, very much a frustrating process for businesses. I don't know.
I don't like the example that happened to you, but it's a great example of what a bit of the issue is with the onboarding of business. Trust in data was something you said at the start as well. Owen, anything you want to pick up on data availability?
Yeah, so obviously when you're dealing with consumers, everybody knows where to get the data from. It's pretty comprehensive. It's well covered, and it's cheap. With KYB, it's the opposite. Business data varies massively from supplier to supplier. It costs a fortune. It's ridiculously expensive unless you sort of got a development team and you're able to integrate with all the registries globally if they even have an API. And then when you get down to the UBOs, obviously there's this sort of massive push for identifying who UBOs are and being transparent about who your UBOs are. And I think 70 plus countries now have a public UBO register where companies have to declare their UBO when they're incorporating or when they're filing their information. But very few of those registers are actually sort of available to the public. Many hide behind paywalls. UK were pretty transparent. There's Ukraine and one other, I think, off the top of my head, that are completely open. Your home registry, Peter, in Belgium, I think you need to enter a social security number to be able to get access to the data there.
Welcome.
Yeah, so we'll use yours. But it's a bit of a closed shop. So there's this sort of, we're paying lip service to transparency, but we're not really pushing it through. There's always some hurdle for people to get around that can be commercialized. And sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to your point of this lack of transparency between these UBO registers. Another interesting fun fact, actually, that, since another country can't get access to the business register or the UBO registers from another country, what they will ask is, can you ask a notary to file or draft an UBO declaration? That's usually somewhat like a way to mitigate this lack of access. But then, interestingly enough, more and more notaries are hesitant to draft these declarations because their business liability insurance strongly advises against it. So it's interesting. So that whole system is broken. So it's very hard to find someone or a method to verify data.
Just to add to that, with all the difficulty of doing KYB and getting your business up and running and in a compliant way, the other parts of the government don't seem to understand that, because they're still looking for people like marketplaces to somehow be able to onboard these sellers, these businesses, in under 10 days in the US and under 90 days in the EU, and there is no leeway for that. Also, the requirements are not up for debate. So it seems interesting that this system is known to be slow, antiquated, broken, but yet they're writing regulations as if it works perfectly.
Travis, I'm picking up on that because you and I have spoken about the regulation in the past. So it's apart from let's say the duration of time, how quickly you need to turn something around. Do you find that the regulation is always perfectly clear as what is understood under KYB? Are those guidelines good?
No, they are. They're written by politicians or bureaucrats, and that's great. But they are not always the most clear. They leave a lot to interpretation, and the most current round of regulations in around the world have followed that pattern. In the U.S., our regulations, the last few sets have been extraordinarily vague. They state something along the lines of you must verify the information.
Yeah.
And that's the extent of it. In DAX 7, it's a little bit better, but not really. So the regulations are extraordinarily fuzzy, and as with most of the industry and marketplaces, we are just waiting to see how they're enforced and who gets fined first.
Okay. Look, I maybe shifted because pain points, but I wanted to get some other insights as well. Atul, I think this I'm gonna add this one to you first. So, do you notice from the market that there's a difference though in is the market being strong enough in their voice? As in, there's a difference that those one-person bands, those gig economists, they have different expectations when they, let's say, they do an onboarding. Do you feel that from the market that they have different expectations already? They're not that happy with everything being so bureaucratic and uploading paper versions of whatever. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think they might have it slightly easier.
Okay.
But we recently, I've been through this experience ourselves. When we set up our new entity, we had to go and open a bank account. And we had to put together a very comprehensive set of documentation, business plans, 5-year forecasts, etc. And we were lucky we had all that information, but I can't imagine too many people being able to do that, let alone the person that was, our bank manager, who is then assessing a business plan for a business that they actually don't even understand. So, would they know whether I put 100 million or 100 billion? Would they know the difference? And actually, what difference would it make to the fact of, can I get a current account to do regular operational spending? So I think that's one thing. For the gig economy worker, they'll go and find the easiest account to open. So there isn't that level of loyalty. They don't need complicated services. They generally, at this early stage, don't even need lending. So they'll go and find, they'll probably do a Google search for business bank account and see which links come out best, and probably apply to 3 or 4 to see which one sticks. And so I think that's going to be a common trend. It's very difficult to get a bank account in the UK at the moment. And I think the problem you have is that creates the wrong that creates the wrong kind of trend, because people will use their own bank account because they have to. They've got no choice. And then it becomes very hard to reconcile that and move people away from that. So, it's in everyone's interest to make that a robust but relatively easy process.
Yeah.
I like those insights, because it ties the first point that Melisande mentioned, where it's not only regulation, but they're losing money if they don't have a smooth onboarding. And then if I Travis' point earlier, it's, well, we're being forced to do it. And so if we tie that together, then it's in everybody's best interest that we can make it as smooth as possible.
Just
Travis?
to add a note to that, we have several customers, both in the US and in EU, that are some of our larger sellers that are private individuals, at least according to their bank account. Simply because one of them shared a story with us about going to the bank and attempting to explain to the bank that I sell sneakers online and I make $1 million a year. And apparently that didn't go over well. And it was one of the larger banks in Europe. So that individual is now still an individual in our accounts. They are supposedly a company, but they simply can't get the banking industry to work with them in a reasonable time frame. So we have a lot of individuals that are really businesses in our database right now. So doing KYB, KYC, it's kind of, which one do you do? Do you do a KYC because they are banking as an individual, or do you do KYB because they are really a business? So we have some funny stories about the banking industry around the world, making it hard for people to become businesses.
Fair enough. Yeah, Melisande, absolutely.
Yeah, just to give sort of one positive note here.
Please.
After going through this 9 to 12 months experience with an incumbent bank, as you, Atul, mentioned, you start Googling, like, okay, this is such a headache. And the headache will repeat because you have to go through an account verification process, mostly every year. Yeah, it's not a one-time thing. So we started Googling to, okay, is there any alternative? And then we found one of these digital banks, challenger banks, and it literally, with the same information, 72 hours. So it was mind-blowing. How is this possible?
That's a statistic. That's a number.
So it is possible. It was basically sort of, uploading documents in an application. I don't know how they do it, but apparently it is possible.
So, to your earlier point, the first bank lost money on you because you couldn't onboard, and the second just gained business. And so, you as a business onboarding, in the end, you're going to vote with your money, and you're going to go where the onboarding is the quickest. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, well, I actually it took me 9 months to have the first bank account. So I basically persisted and succeeded. However, I wanted to have a backup scenario, because if you have to go through this process every year, and if you fail, they just block your account. So that's also a substantial risk. So I think it's always good to have a plan B. And then apparently that plan B took only 72 hours. And then I was shocked. I was like, how come?
That makes the plan A look very cumbersome.
Absolutely.
Now, look, I can honestly keep on asking questions, but we're heading into the end. And so from what I heard, it gets easier and easier to create a business. Customers, businesses, and then especially those one-person bands, they're going to vote with their money. They're going to go for the UX that is the easiest for them. And meanwhile, businesses that want to onboard those customers, they're still dealing with all the pain points. So now that I have a bunch of industry experts on the screen here with me, I'm going to ask you as a final question: what type of tips can you already give, be it in mindset or maybe practical tips that you could give to our viewers as how can they optimize their KYB process? And I'm going to let everybody have a second to think on that, and I'm going to pass the ball first to Owen.
Oh, thanks, Peter. Obviously, we've established that it's a massively manual process for almost a third of companies. There's no such thing as full automation of KYB in every case, but I think leveraging technology, where you can, is important. I think there's going back to the trends, we are seeing a lot of startups like CAF that are dedicated to KYB onboarding rather than some KYC company trying to shoehorn business data into a flow. So yeah, we're trying to streamline it as much as possible and make it as efficient as possible. To go back to the point around the documents, we're asking businesses to self-identify, perform a search, self-identify themselves, upload any documentation beforehand, be it certificates of incorporation, trade references, anything like that, and then listing out your directors or your UBOs and performing follow-on IDVs there and then. So for the gig economy workers, people like myself with their own business, it's incredibly quick to onboard using a solution like that. My business is there, it's on Companies House, I'm the UBO, there's my passport, there's my face, job done. So there are more and more companies like CAF out there that are trying to sort of streamline things and make it more efficient. And I think the technology is getting better, even if we're still waiting for the data to catch up.
Okay, so go to specialized providers. Atul, what would be your tip on how to optimize the KYB process?
I think, again, coming from a challenger bank, the KYB process of understanding who the owner of a business is only one small part of understanding what a business does. A lot of the people that sign up to us are new businesses. So actually the thing that's really important is getting to understand trading data around that business. That's where you find out where the money's coming in. That's where you find out where the money's coming out. That's when you see the volumes, etc. So I think putting too many barriers up at the KYB stage is probably going to lose you some potentially very good customers. And so I think being sensible and using technology to advantage to do the KYB bit, but then not forgetting about KYB, because KYB carries on post onboarding, and making sure that way you then de-risk in the future by understanding customer habits and understanding the business better.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's so not ask for everything unnecessary of the bet and make it a flow. Travis, do you have any tips for our listeners?
I'm lucky here. I'm the consumer of KYB. So my advice is that right now it's find the right partners. And I put that very clearly, partners, 1 to 2 for each region, because every partner seems to be very good in 1 or 2 regions, but not worldwide. So if you're a worldwide company, you're probably going to have more than 1 partner right now, getting better at that, but you might want a couple partners for coverage. And also work with your customers to let them know these things are coming, not when they cross the threshold, but before they cross the threshold, so that they can actually plan ahead and get this done. If not, they are on a clock the moment they pass certain thresholds, and sometimes that clock is very, very tight.
I like these are gold nuggets, because Owen started with specialized tools to help you. Atul, you then mentioned build a custom flow. Don't ask everything straight off the bat. Travis, work with partners with emphasis of this, especially if you're a global business. And then Melisande, I'm gonna give it to you at the end, because I would imagine you could potentially say that, well, if you want to be on top of the trends, follow the papers. But any other good advice you have for our listeners to wrap it up?
Yeah, maybe building up on to Travis' point. I mean, find the right partners, because if you don't do it, your competitor will do it. Because
Yes.
you know, consumers or businesses, they have choice, so they will just go through the platform or bank that offers the best experience, and they will tell their friends or colleagues, or like, this was a horrible experience. We'll never do that again. I had this better experience with this and this marketplace or challenger bank, and so expectations rise. So yeah, maybe that as a sort of a last comment.
That's a perfect way to wrap it up. So specialized tools, flows, partners, and then optimize it, or your competitors will, and you lose revenue. And not only you won't be in line with regulation, but you lose revenue. I really like that point, that it's a money making product instead of always a pain. So look, we're at the end, unfortunately, but I do want to say thank you very much. Thank you, Melisande. Thank you, Atul. Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Owen, for joining. It was a blast. Hope we can do this again in the future. And then I would say thank you to the listeners as well, or to the viewers. Thank you for enjoying the show. And then we have a bunch of other shows in this series. So there's a bunch of there that I look forward to watching. So please go have a look at our calendar, and there might be some more for you. Thank you, everybody, and have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.